The morning quiet of Frost Valley carried the kind of peace only those who had once lost it could truly appreciate. The sun was still climbing through a veil of pale mist hanging above the pine trees, and the cold air held the crisp bite of early autumn. Noah Calder walked along the familiar gravel path, leading toward the center of town, his steps steady yet unhurried. At 38, the Marine veteran moved with the silent economy of a man who had spent too long marching into danger to ever stop paying attention to the world around him. Kodiak padded beside him, the German shepherd's sable black and gray coat catching the soft morning light. 4 years old, 90 pounds of disciplined muscle and instinct, Kodiak walked with his head slightly lowered, ears alert, nose constantly sampling the shifting breeze. Most dogs sniffed out food or squirrels. Kodiak sniffed out intentions. Noah trusted his instincts more than his own. Noah wasn't returning to Frost Valley for nostalgia. He had come for one person, Ruth Ellison. Ruth was 76, a small, gentle woman with a quiet grace that wrapped around people like a warm blanket. She wore her silver hair in a loose bun, strands always escaping to frame her soft, lined face. Her pale eyes carried the tenderness of someone who had known loss, but refused to let bitterness make a home inside her. Years before, when Noah returned from deployment hollowed out by things he didn't talk about, Ruth had been the first to bring a bowl of hot soup to his door and say nothing. She simply sat there with him, letting silence be the healing that words couldn't reach. She became the closest thing to a mother he had left. And today, as Noah pushed open the door of the Lantern Diner, he realized instantly that something was wrong. The diner, usually filled with a warm clatter of mugs and friendly chatter, felt like a held breath. The bell above the door chimed softly behind him, but no one looked up. Noah paused at the threshold, his hand still resting on the doorframe. Kodiak stopped too, ears flicking forward, tail lowering. At Ruth's usual table by the window, where she liked to sit so she could watch the morning sun roll across the lake, she sat hunched slightly, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her shoulders trembled in that barely noticeable way that only people who truly cared would notice. Her eyes, normally full of quiet kindness, now glimmered with something heavier. Fear, maybe, or heartbreak. Across from her sat Brent Mallory. Brent was a tall man in his mid-40s, built big from years of construction work, but soft around the edges from beer and apathy. His face was ruddy, jaw shadowed with unshaven stubble, and his eyes, small, narrow, calculating, were fixed on Ruth like a wolf watching a cornered rabbit. His gray work jacket was stained with dried mud and concrete dust, and he lounged back in the booth with the smug arrogance of someone convinced the world could be bent, with just the right amount of pressure. A stack of papers lay on the table between them like a trap. Brent spoke first, his voice a low, oily mockery of sympathy. "Come on now, Mrs. Ellison. A woman your age shouldn't be worrying about property lines and lakefront maintenance. Sell the house. Let us take care of you." The way he said, "take care of you," made Noah's skin tighten. Ruth's voice trembled, but did not break. "This is my home, Brent. My husband built every wooden beam with his own hands. I'm not selling it." Brent chuckled, slow and cold. "He's gone, Ruth. Holding on to that place won't bring him back." That sentence sliced the air like a blade. Noah felt something twist in his chest, but Kodiak reacted first. The German shepherd let out a low, guttural sound, not loud but vibrating with warning. His ears sharpened. His tail, not tucked but lowered, signaled the kind of discomfort Noah rarely saw in him. Kodiak took half a step forward, positioning his body between Noah and Ruth as if he sensed the emotional blow before it even landed. Noah rested a hand on Kodiak's shoulder, grounding both of them. The dog's muscles quivered beneath his palm. He stepped farther inside, but didn't approach yet. He studied Ruth's face, the faint tremor in her hands, the sheen of unshed tears. He saw the weight of memories pressing against her fragile strength. And he remembered. The night Noah came home from deployment, bruised by what he'd seen overseas and what he'd lost. Ruth was the only one who noticed he couldn't stand bright lights. She turned off the lamp without asking, placed a warm blanket over his shoulders, and said softly, "You don't have to talk. You just need to rest." That night, Noah had broken quietly, a grown man crying without sound because someone finally gave him permission to stop being strong. And now, that woman, the only person who ever saw him without armor, was being cornered like prey. Brent shoved a form closer to her. "You keep stalling, and this offer disappears. Sign it. Be smart." For a moment, Ruth didn't move. She just stared at the paper, as though it were a gravestone. Then she whispered, voice cracking, "My husband used to sit on the porch every evening. He said the lake looked different every day, like it changed moods." Her hand trembled. "If I sell the house, I'll lose the last place I can still feel him." A tear slid down her cheek, catching the sunlight shyly. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it hit Noah and Kodiak like a blade. Kodiak stepped forward again and gently rested his head against Ruth's knee. The old woman's fingers tangled in his fur, grateful, fragile. The dog's eyes, deep amber, sorrowful, looked up at her with an empathy so instinctive it felt like prayer. Ruth whispered, "You always understand. Don't you, boy?" Noah inhaled slowly, a tight breath that scraped the inside of his chest. Brent scoffed and stood up, grabbing his paperwork. "I'll be back, and next time I won't take no for an answer." He left with a smug look over his shoulder, the diner door slamming closed behind him. Ruth exhaled shakily, the sound small and defeated, the kind of sound a heart makes when it's starting to crack. Noah finally walked over, his voice low and gentle. "Ruth, are you all right?" She tried to smile, her lips trembling like a leaf clinging to its branch in the wind. "Oh, Noah, I'm fine, dear, just a little shaken." Kodiak pressed himself closer to her, as if to stitch her back together with warmth alone. That was when Noah felt it. That marine instinct, that cold coil in the gut that warned him danger was not coming. It was already here. As Noah helped Ruth to her feet, Kodiak suddenly stopped moving. His ears shot forward. His entire posture shifted, alert, tense, as if he'd caught a scent he recognized from somewhere far darker than Frost Valley. His pupils narrowed. A sound rose in his throat, deeper than a growl. Almost like grief, Noah crouched beside him. "What is it, boy?" Kodiak didn't tear his eyes away from the door Brent had walked through. As though he knew, truly knew, that something had just begun. Something none of them were ready for. The moment passed, but the chill remained. Ruth steadied herself by placing a hand on Noah's arm. "I'm sorry you had to see that." Noah shook his head softly. "You don't owe me an apology. What's happening, Ruth?" She looked down, clutching her knitted shawl, the one her late husband once wrapped around her shoulders on cold nights. "Brent isn't acting alone, Noah. He's working for someone. Someone who wants every piece of land by the lake. They won't stop." Her voice cracked again. "And I don't know how much more I can take." Noah swallowed hard. He placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." Kodiak nudged Ruth's leg as if seconding Noah's vow. Noah knew then that his visit wasn't temporary. He wasn't here to rest. He wasn't here to heal. He was here because something dark had set its eyes on the sweetest soul in Frost Valley. Something was hunting her, little by little. And Noah called her, trained, scarred, and fiercely loyal. Would never let the darkness win again. Not this time. Not under his watch. And as Kodiak sat beside him, eyes locked on the door Brent had vanished through, Noah felt the storm gathering. This was no longer a visit. This was the beginning of a battle for family. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, amen, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge to help us spread light, faith, and hope. The afternoon light stretched long across Frost Valley as Noah Calder followed the winding gravel road toward Ruth Ellison's house. The path was familiar, yet today it carried a heaviness he couldn't ignore. After what happened at the diner, he couldn't shake the image of Brent Mallory's smug grin or the way Ruth's hands trembled as she whispered about her late husband. Beside him, Kodiak walked in a slow, attentive stride, ears shifting at the faintest rustle of wind across the pines. The 4-year-old German shepherd wasn't just alert. He was uneasy, as if the air itself carried a warning. Ruth's home sat on a gentle rise overlooking the still waters of Serenity Lake. The cabin was built of dark timber, polished smooth by time and weather, with a porch where her husband used to sit every evening. Noah paused at the bottom of the steps. The house had always felt warm, protected, but today, something was off. A light tension hung over it, thin as a thread, but tight as a snare. Ruth opened the door before he could knock. She looked smaller somehow, her light beige sweater hanging a little looser, her pale blue eyes dimmer than usual. Yet she still carried that quiet dignity that made people instinctively soften around her. "Thank you for coming, dear," she said, voice warm but tired. Noah smiled softly. "Just checking on you. Thought I'd look at the roof before the weather turns." Ruth stepped aside. "Come in. You know this house always feels a little steadier when you're here." Inside, the scent of lavender and old pine merged in a familiar comfort. But Noah quickly noticed things that did not belong. A window latch bent inward, a shallow scratch near the back door frame, and a folded piece of tape stuck to the inside lock. An old trick used by intruders to test whether someone opened the door. Kodiak noticed too. The dog's ears pricked forward, nose twitching as he sniffed the baseboard, then the windowsill. His tail lowered. A low hum built in his chest. Not a growl, not exactly, but a sound Noah had learned to treat as a red flag. "You've had visitors," Noah murmured. Ruth's gaze drifted to the lake as if she were ashamed of the truth. She clasped her wrinkled hands together, fingers trembling slightly. "Last night, someone knocked on the door," she whispered. "But when I turned the porch light on, they disappeared into the trees. I thought it was a prank. But now..." Noah swallowed his anger. "You should have called me." She gave a fragile smile. "I didn't want to trouble you, darling. You've carried enough weight in your life." He wanted to argue, but a part of him understood. Ruth had always been the kind of woman who carried her pain quietly, as if noise would make it heavier. He followed her into the living room. The space was filled with memories. Framed photographs of her and her late husband, a pair of worn leather boots still tucked neatly near the door, flannel jacket hanging from the coat rack, untouched since the man passed. The air felt heavy with absence. Noah's eyes fell on a portrait above the fireplace. Ruth's husband, Walter Ellison, stood tall and smiling in it. A man in his early 70s, lean yet sturdy, with weathered skin and the kind of kind eyes that touched you even through glass. His passing had shaken the entire valley, but Ruth had felt it the deepest. Suddenly, Kodiak walked to that photograph. He sat down right beneath it, staring up at Walter's face with an intensity Noah had only seen on battlefields. The dog then let out a faint, almost mournful rumble. Ruth pressed a hand to her chest. "He always liked Kodiak," she whispered. But Noah frowned. Kodiak didn't mourn like that. He sensed things. He reacted to memories the way he reacted to threats, with instinct deeper than logic. And right now, Kodiak looked as if the house itself was remembering something painful. As Noah leaned forward to check the bent window latch, Kodiak suddenly snapped his head toward the forest behind the cabin. Every muscle in the dog's body tensed. His fur rose along his spine. He growled, a low, deep growl Noah had heard only 3 times before. Once in Afghanistan, when a hidden explosive device was close. Once when a stranger followed Noah through a dark alley in Denver, and once when Noah himself was on the edge of breaking. Ruth gasped softly. What? What does he see? Kodiak didn't bark, didn't lunge. He simply stared at the tree line with the stillness of an executioner. Noah followed his gaze, and for a split second, something moved between the aspens. A shadow, a figure, or maybe just the wind. But Kodiak's voice said otherwise. And for the first time, Noah felt the beginnings of dread crawling under his skin. Something was out there, and it was watching. The moment passed, but its echo lingered. Noah forced himself to examine the house with a soldier's precision. He moved carefully through each room, checking the locks, inspecting the floorboards. There were more signs. Smudges on the doorknob, faint footprints near the back porch, and a cigarette butt by the woodshed. Ruth didn't smoke, and neither did anyone who visited her. "Someone's testing your routines," Noah murmured, "trying to see when you're alone." Ruth sat down heavily on her floral-patterned sofa. "I don't understand. Why would anyone want to frighten an old woman?" Noah hesitated, weighing what Brent had said. "It's about the house, Ruth, the lakefront property. They want it, and they're pushing hard." Ruth closed her eyes. "Walter always said someone would come for it one day. But we believed people still respected boundaries in this valley." Noah looked out the window at the quiet lake, its surface rippling under the breeze. "Not everyone does. Not anymore." Ruth's face softened with sorrow rather than fear. She walked slowly to the hallway, motioning to Noah and Kodiak to follow. She opened the last door on the right, a bedroom untouched by time. The air inside felt sacred. Walter's coat was draped neatly over a wooden chair. His watch rested on the nightstand, still set to the hour he last wound it. A pair of reading glasses lay open on his unfinished book. "I haven't changed anything in here," Ruth said softly. "Some nights I sit on the bed and pretend he's just in the next room brushing his teeth." Her voice trembled. "I know it sounds foolish." Noah shook his head gently. "It's not foolish." She looked at the coat and smiled faintly. "He wore this the day before he died. He said the weather was changing. He could always feel it in his bones." Kodiak stepped into the room and approached the coat. He sniffed it gently, then let out a soft whine, a sorrowful, aching sound Noah had never heard from him. Ruth's breath hitched. "It's like he knows," she whispered. Noah couldn't deny it. Kodiak's instincts were rarely wrong, and right now, the dog was telling him that this house, this memory, this loss, was being threatened by something far larger than Brent Mallory's greed. He stepped outside to check the perimeter, and mid-scan, something cold gripped his gut. Through the trees, barely visible, sat a dark vehicle. No headlights, no movement, just parked there, angled toward the house. A watcher. Noah felt heat behind his sternum, the kind that always preceded a fight. He returned inside. "Ruth, have you noticed anyone new in town? Anyone around the lake?" She hesitated. "Sometimes I hear footsteps outside late at night, or the sound of gravel moving. But by the time I look out, there's nothing." Kodiak walked to Ruth and pressed his head against her leg. She stroked him with weak hands, tears gathering again in her eyes. "Noah," she whispered, voice thin with fear she tried hard to bury, "will they keep coming?" He knelt in front of her. "Not if I'm here." She blinked slowly, overcome. "Are you frightened, dear?" He breathed out, steady but honest. "For you?" "Yes." She gave a small, broken laugh. "I'm not afraid of them taking me. I'm afraid..." Her voice cracked. "I'm afraid one day this house will no longer be a place where Walter can come back to me." Those words pierced more deeply than any threat. Kodiak sensed it too. He walked around Ruth, guarding her legs like she was the last light left in the world. Noah placed a hand over hers. "As long as I'm breathing, no one is taking this place from you." Outside, the lake shimmered like a half-forgotten memory. And in the woods, something watched, waiting. If this chapter moved your heart, please like, comment, amen, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge so we can keep spreading stories of faith, hope, and God's quiet miracles. The next morning arrived in a muted gray, the kind of quiet dawn that made Frost Valley look more like a painting than a place where real people suffered real fear. Noah Calder stood on Ruth Ellison's porch, one hand resting on the railing worn smooth by decades of use. He hadn't slept well, not with thoughts of the shadowed vehicle in the woods and Kodiak's reaction still pulsing in his mind. Kodiak sat beside him now, the German shepherd's posture stiff, amber eyes tracking the tree line as if expecting the darkness from last night to take shape again. Inside the cabin, Ruth moved gently from room to room, with the slow rhythm of someone trying to hold herself together. She wore a soft gray cardigan over her shoulders, her silver hair tied loosely. And though she smiled when Noah entered for breakfast, he saw the strain around her eyes, the kind that comes from too many sleepless nights and fears she didn't dare to voice. "Sit down, dear," she said with weary warmth, pushing a plate toward him. "You need something to eat. Marines don't run on worry." Noah smiled faintly, though his appetite was thin. "And you need rest." "I'll rest when I know the house is safe," Ruth whispered. They ate in the soft stillness of the cabin, sunlight slowly filling the kitchen. It might have even felt peaceful, if not for the sudden sound of metal scraping against wood. A noise from the front porch. Kodiak was up before Noah could react. The shepherd's body shot forward like an arrow, nails scraping across the wooden floor. He barked, sharp, deep, commanding, the kind of bark he used when danger stood close enough to touch. Noah rushed to the door and swung it open. Nothing. Nothing but a small envelope lying on the porch boards, already quivering in the morning breeze. Ruth's breath hitched behind him. Oh God, not again. The envelope had no stamp, no address, only one word scrawled in thick black marker. Signed, Noah opened it carefully. Inside was a torn piece of lined paper containing a short message. "You're running out of time, Ruth. Sell before things get worse." His hands curled into fists, knuckles whitening. "Brent," Noah muttered. Ruth lowered herself into the porch chair, the strength draining from her bones. "He's been sending little messages. First on the door, then in my mailbox, now this." "Why didn't you tell me?" Noah asked, trying to stay calm. Her lips trembled into a sad smile. "Because I didn't want you to feel you had to stay, Noah. because staying means reliving too many battles. I've fought worse than bullies. Noah's voice darkened. And I don't run. She looked away, toward the lake, where the quiet water reflected a world that felt anything but peaceful. Noah stepped back into the house to check the windows again, and his stomach tightened at the sight of fresh damage. A stone lay on the floor beneath the living room window, glass shards scattered around it. Someone had thrown it with enough force to crack the inner frame. He looked closer. Attached to the stone was another note. Last warning. Before he could respond, Ruth appeared behind him, a hand covering her mouth. I didn't hear it. It must have been in the back room. You should have called me. She shook her head. I didn't want to bother you, dear. He exhaled sharply. You are never a bother to me. Ruth closed her eyes, leaning against the wall. And the porch light. They smashed it last night. I thought maybe it was an accident. But nothing is an accident anymore. Noah felt the heaviness building, anger, fear, helplessness blending together. And then Ruth whispered something he wasn't prepared for. There's more. She motioned him toward her bedroom. Her hands shook as she opened the drawer of the small wooden nightstand. Out came a faded envelope, yellowed at the edges, handwriting faint but still recognizable. It's from Walter, she said, her voice breaking on the name. She unfolded it carefully. The paper crackled with age. Noah stood quietly, Kodiak sitting beside him like a guardian. Ruth read aloud, her voice trembling like a candle in wind. If ever comes the day you are forced to leave this house, I'm sorry I'm not there to keep it safe for you. Forgive me for not staying longer. Forgive me for leaving you with the weight of memories. She couldn't finish. Her sight grew watery, her breath shallow. The letters slipped from her fingers, and Kodiak, instinctive, gentle, rose onto his hind legs and placed one paw softly on her knee. His eyes met hers, deep amber shimmering with a warmth that felt almost human. Ruth sobbed once, quietly, and rested her hand on the shepherd's head. You understand, don't you, boy? Better than any of them ever will. Noah felt his throat tighten. He had watched men break in combat, had held dying friends, had faced death himself. But nothing hurt like seeing an old woman fight to keep the last piece of her heart from being stolen. A sudden crack echoed from outside. Sharp, metallic. Noah and Kodiak jerked toward the window. The shepherd stiffened, muscles coiling like springs. Noah pushed aside the curtain. The broken porch light wire sparked once, then twice. And in that brief flash, he saw a silhouette standing among the trees. Tall, still, watching. The spark died, and the figure vanished into the shadows, as if swallowed by the woods. Ruth covered her mouth. They're not stopping, Noah. Kodiak growled, low, certain, fearful in a way Noah had never heard. Not fear for himself, fear for her. And Noah understood. This wasn't harassment. This was escalation. And whoever was behind it was growing bolder. Noah locked every door and window, then knelt beside Ruth on the sofa. We're reporting this now. No, she whispered. Sheriff Knox. He won't help us. Noah froze. Sterling Knox? You think he's involved? I don't think, Noah. I know. Her voice softened to a whisper. He and Brent. They've been in each other's pockets for years. Land deals, under-the-table favors. Walter tried to warn people once, but no one listened. Noah sank onto the sofa, trying to process the new weight pressing against his chest. A corrupt sheriff. A greedy contractor. A shadow in the woods. And an elderly widow trying to protect more than just a house. How long has this been happening? He asked. Ruth stared at her trembling hands. Since the day after Walter died, as if they were waiting. The pain in her voice was enough to break anyone's heart. I only have this house left, and you, Noah. I don't want to lose anything more. Noah placed his hand over hers, the same way she once did for him when he returned from war, broken in places no doctor could see. You won't lose this house, he said. Not while I'm here. Not while I'm breathing. Kodiak pressed his head onto her lap again, sealing the promise with silent devotion. Outside, the woods rustled with unseen movement. Frost Valley was no longer the peaceful haven it once was. Darkness was circling Ruth's home like a predator waiting to strike. But this time, she wasn't alone. If this chapter touched your heart, please like, comment, amen, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge so we can continue sharing stories of faith, hope, and God's quiet miracles. Night fell heavily over Frost Valley, the sky sinking into a deep indigo that blurred the treetops into silhouettes. The cabin by the lake, usually a place of gentle stillness, felt strangely hollow tonight, as if the shadows clinging to the porch were waiting for something. Noah Calder sat in the armchair by the window, keeping watch as the clock ticked past midnight. His jaw was tense, his mind fixed on every sound outside. The occasional whistle of wind, the soft rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. But beneath it all lay the unmistakable sense of being watched. Kodiak lay at his feet, head resting on his paws, but eyes half open, scanning the darkness with instinctive vigilance. The 4-year-old German shepherd didn't sleep deeply anymore. Not since the figure in the woods, not since the letters, not since the shattered window. Fear was not a word Noah associated with his dog. But tonight, Kodiak's breathing held a hesitant edge. Ruth Ellison, wrapped in her soft gray cardigan, sat on the sofa with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She tried to read, but every turn of the page was interrupted by a nervous glance toward the window. The dim lamp beside her cast her silver hair in a warm glow, but her eyes reflected only exhaustion. "Noah," she whispered after a long silence. Do you think they'll try again tonight?" Noah didn't want to lie to her, so he chose the closest thing to truth that wouldn't add weight to her already trembling heart. "If they do, they'll answer to me. And Kodiak." At his name, Kodiak lifted his head. His amber eyes glowed like embers catching fire. Ruth offered a small, sorrowful smile. "He's always listening. He always will," Noah said, reaching down to stroke the shepherd's thick sable fur. Moments later, the night delivered its first fracture. A metallic clang outside, sharp, deliberate, unnatural. Kodiak shot to his feet so fast the lamp on the table rattled. His ears pointed straight toward the porch. Noah stood, muscles coiled like springs, scanning the darkness through the window. "What was that?" Ruth whispered, voice trembling. Noah raised a hand for silence, but Kodiak didn't wait. The dog lunged for the front door with a deep, visceral bark, the kind he only used when danger was within striking distance. His nails scraped across the wooden floor as he pushed through the cracked door Noah hadn't fully latched earlier. "Kodiak!" Noah rushed after him. The cold night slapped him in the face. Frost Valley's air carried the metallic scent of pine needles and something else. Something wrong. Kodiak was already on the porch, nose to the ground. Then he spotted it. A piece of raw meat lay under the first step, gleaming under moonlight. Noah's heart dropped. "No, Kodiak, leave it." But instinct moved faster. The shepherd lunged forward, grabbed the meat, and staggered almost instantly. His legs buckled beneath him, his body twitched once, then collapsed into the damp grass. "Kodiak!" Noah sprinted, falling to his knees. Kodiak's eyes were wide open, but unfocused. His chest rose in shallow, desperate movements. When Noah touched him, the dog's muscles spasmed beneath his palms. And then Noah smelled it. Chemical, sharp, bitter. Poison. Noah's mind flashed back to Afghanistan. A K-9 unit dropping without warning, a handler screaming for help, dust rising as soldiers rushed forward too late. No, stay with me," Noah begged, voice cracking. Behind them, the woods rustled. No shape, no footsteps. But Noah felt it. Someone was there. Someone was watching the moment Kodiak fell. Ruth's scream tore through the yard. "Kodiak! Oh God, no!" She stumbled down the steps, falling to her knees beside Noah. Tears streamed down her face before she could wipe them away. "Don't let them take him, Noah. They've taken everything else. Don't let them take him too." Noah pulled Kodiak into his arms, cradling the 90-pound dog like he weighed nothing. Kodiak's head lolled against his chest, breath wheezing through partially closed lungs. Noah could barely breathe himself. "I'm here," Noah whispered, voice breaking from a place he had buried for years. "I'm right here. You're okay? You hear me? Stay with me, soldier." Ruth pressed her hands against her mouth, sobbing uncontrollably. "They're monsters. They're monsters." Noah carried Kodiak inside, placing him gently on a blanket near the fireplace. The dog's eyes fluttered weakly, each blink slower than the last. His paws twitched as though he were trying to stand, trying to defend Ruth, trying to do what he'd always done, protect the ones he loved. Noah grabbed his phone, dialing the emergency vet he remembered from years ago. The man on the other end, Dr. Hansen, a stocky veterinarian with ash-blonde hair and a calm voice, answered immediately. Noah didn't waste time. "My dog's been poisoned, sedative or worse, breathing shallow, pupils dilated, tremors. He's 4 years old, German Shepherd. I need instructions, now." Dr. Hansen's tone sharpened. "Try to keep him awake. Keep him warm. Do not let him vomit. Bring him to my clinic immediately." "It'll take 20 minutes, Noah said. "Then you need to leave now." But he couldn't. Not with Ruth trembling like a leaf in the doorway. Not with the forest outside swallowing whoever had done this. "Ruth," Noah said, forcing steadiness into his voice. "Stay inside. Lock the door. Don't answer it for anyone but me." She nodded, tears still falling. "Please, save him, Noah." He wrapped Kodiak in a blanket and lifted him again. The dog's head rested limply against Noah's arm. Kodiak's breath hitched, one painful gasp, then another. It sounded like a life slipping away molecule by molecule. "No," Noah whispered, forehead pressed to Kodiak's. "You don't get to leave me. Not like this. Not tonight." As he carried Kodiak toward the truck, something cracked behind him. Not a branch, a footstep. He turned sharply, eyes scanning the tree line. The porch light flickered once, casting a trembling glow across the yard. Through the dying light, Noah saw something glinting. Metal? A belt buckle? Eyes? But as soon as he focused, the forest swallowed whatever it was. He heard Ruth crying inside the house. He felt Kodiak's heartbeat weakening against his wrist. He didn't have time to chase monsters. He only had time to save one life. Noah placed Kodiak carefully on the back seat and whispered, "I'm here, buddy. Don't leave. Not tonight. Not ever." Kodiak's ear twitched faintly in response. Just before Noah shut the door, the dog mustered a tiny movement, lifting his head just half an inch and reaching out with his tongue to lick the back of Noah's shaking hand. It was weak, barely a touch. But it shattered Noah, because in that moment, It wasn't a dog licking his hand. It was a promise, a goodbye, or maybe an apology for failing to protect the home he loved. Noah closed his eyes, holding back tears he hadn't cried since the battlefield. "Don't you apologize," he whispered. "You did everything. It's my turn now." He slid into the driver's seat, engine roaring to life, and sped down the gravel road toward the clinic and toward whatever nightmare waited ahead. If this chapter touched your heart, please like, comment, amen, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge to help us share more stories of faith, protection, and God's quiet miracles. The drive back from the veterinary clinic felt longer than any battlefield convoy Noah Calder had ever endured. Kodiak lay on the back seat wrapped in a warm blanket, his breathing still slow but no longer fading. The anti-sedative Dr. Hansen administered had steadied him, though the poison lingered in his bloodstream like a shadow refusing to leave. The 4-year-old shepherd tried once to lift his head, but Noah gently pressed it back down. "Easy, boy," he whispered. "You're safe." For the first time in hours, Kodiak's eyes closed without fear. His chest rose in a more natural rhythm. Alive, fighting, holding on. Noah's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, his knuckles whitened. He had seen too much death. Friends turned cold in his arms, brothers in arms slipping away in sand and smoke. But seeing Kodiak collapse felt different. It wasn't just losing a partner. It was losing the one creature who anchored him through nights when PTSD clawed at him with teeth of memory. When he reached Ruth's cabin, dawn was stretching pink across the lake. The house looked fragile in the morning light, small, wooden, weather-beaten, holding itself together by willpower and love alone. But inside that fragility lived a truth Noah was now determined to uncover. Ruth opened the door before he could knock. Her soft gray cardigan was clutched around her shoulders, and her silver hair was messier than usual, strands sticking to tear-streaked cheeks. But when she saw Kodiak conscious, her hand flew to her heart, and she exhaled shakily. "Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God," she whispered, voice cracking. "He'll need rest," Noah said softly, carrying Kodiak inside. "But he's out of danger." Ruth knelt beside the shepherd once he was settled on a blanket by the fireplace. Kodiak opened one eye and nudged her hand weakly with his nose. She stroked his fur, tears falling silently. "You scared me half to death, sweetheart," she murmured. "Please don't do that again." Noah watched them, an aging widow and a poisoned dog, both clinging to each other like survivors of the same storm. He couldn't let this continue. He wouldn't. While Ruth made tea to calm her shaking hands, Noah began searching the house with a new determination, not for signs of intrusion, but for answers. He started with Walter Ellison's old study, a small room filled with books, woodworking tools, and the faint smell of cedar. He ran his fingers along the spines of the books, checking for hidden papers, anything that might explain the escalating threats. When he reached the second drawer of Walter's desk, he felt a slight resistance, as if something inside was wedged. He jiggled the handle gently and managed to pull it open. Inside was a stack of maps. Property maps, old ones, new ones, surveyor drafts, some dating back years. Noah's marine-trained eyes flicked through the details rapidly. Parcels of land around Serenity Lake were marked with red X's. Others were circled in pen. There were notes scribbled in the margins. Unexplained buyout. Forced sale. Knocks involved? And one that made Noah's jaw tighten. If they push further, Ruth will be next. He closed his eyes for a moment. Someone had been tightening a noose around this lake, one property at a time. "Give me strength," he whispered. He kept digging. And in the back of the drawer, hidden under old newspaper clippings, Noah found a leather-bound notebook, its corners frayed, pages worn thin. Walter's handwriting was scrawled across the first page. Journal, Serenity Lake Project Dispute. Just then, Ruth appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. Her hands shook so badly she spilled a bit on the floor. Noah, what did you find? He held up the notebook. This. I think Walter was keeping records. Her breath caught. She placed the mugs aside and pressed a trembling hand to her lips. I didn't know he kept that. I thought everything ended when he got sick. Noah hesitated, but gently he said, Ruth, I don't think he died from sickness. She flinched, as though he had struck her. No, she whispered. Ruth, he said softly, tell me the truth. Her shoulders slumped. She walked slowly to the old rocking chair and sank into it, like her bones had turned to dust. Kodiak, sensing the shift, lifted his head and stared weakly toward her. Ruth wiped at her eyes and finally whispered what had been locked inside her for years. Walter didn't die from illness. He collapsed one night after another argument with the people who wanted the land. He said they were pushing him too hard, threatening him. He tried to fight them, Noah. He tried so hard, but the stress... Her voice broke. It killed him. Noah felt something cold settle in his chest, a fury as sharp as the desert wind. Why didn't you tell anyone? He asked gently. Because who would believe a grieving old woman over the sheriff of this town? She whispered bitterly. Sterling Knox made sure everyone thought Walter was confused, old, paranoid. Noah opened the journal. The first entry was dated 6 months before Walter died. They came again today, offered money, threatened if I refused. The second, Knox is working with developers. Brent is just their messenger. They want the entire lake. And the third, written in a shaky hand, if they silence me, they will come for Ruth next. Noah swallowed the rage clawing at his chest. Then came the entry that froze his heartbeat. If you are reading this, Ruth, I'm sorry. I tried to protect our home. I tried to protect you. Please don't leave the house. It is the last place where our memories still breathe. Ruth's tears fell onto her lap, wetting her cardigan sleeve. He died fighting for me, she whispered. And now, they're coming again. Kodiak, though weak, pushed himself close enough to rest his muzzle on her knee. Ruth stroked his head, sobbing softly. As Noah read the last entry, Kodiak suddenly stiffened. His ears, though lethargic, twitched, turning toward the window. The firelight flickered faintly, and for a moment, Noah thought he heard it too. A soft tapping. Not on the porch, not on the door. On the glass, 3 taps, slow, deliberate. Ruth froze mid-breath. Kodiak's pupils expanded, and his lips curled weakly, trying to growl but producing only a fragile rumble. Noah moved silently to the window and pulled the curtain back. But there was nothing. No one. Only the lake staring back like an unblinking eye. Ruth whispered, voice trembling. They know we're getting close. Noah pressed his hand to the cold glass, jaw tight. Let them come. I'm not losing anyone else. The rest of the day passed in tense quiet as Noah documented everything from Walter's journal and mapped out a timeline. The pattern was clear. Sterling Knox, the sheriff, was orchestrating land acquisitions by intimidation. Brent Mallory acted as the enforcer. And now, with Kodiak nearly killed, they had crossed a line they couldn't step back from. Ruth sat at the table clutching the journal like a lifeline. Walter always said, "The house has a soul. Ours, his, mine. I can't lose it, Noah." You won't, Noah said. Not while I'm breathing. Kodiak whined softly, lifting his head and nudging the journal with his nose, as if he recognized the scent or the sorrow pressed between its pages. The gentle touch made Ruth choke on another sob. That's what Walter used to do, she whispered. He'd nudge my hand like that when I cried. Noah placed an arm around her shoulders. Then he's still here, in this house, in what we're fighting for. Outside, the lake rippled under a growing wind. A storm was coming, one of clouds and one of enemies. But Noah Calder was no stranger to storms. If this chapter touched your heart, please like, comment, amen, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge to help us continue spreading stories of hope, faith, and God's unseen miracles. The storm rolled into Frost Valley like an army descending from the mountains. Rain lashed against the trees in violent sheets, soaking the gravel road and drowning the night in an unrelenting roar. Thunder growled across the sky, echoing through the valley like a warning from something ancient. Noah Calder stepped out of his truck, boots sinking into the mud as he scanned the area around the old maintenance barn. An abandoned building at the edge of town where Brent Mallory had asked to meet. He hadn't expected Brent to cooperate, much less call him and whisper, voice shaking, "I need to talk, not on the phone." Kodiak stood beside Noah, the German shepherd's fur slick with rain but his posture rigid with focus. Though still recovering, the shepherd held his head high, one ear twitching with every shift of the storm. His eyes were sharper than the night, amber, alive, warning. The barn door creaked open. Brent Mallory stepped out, drenched from head to toe, his gray work jacket plastered to his body. The rain emphasized his rough features, the stubble lining his jaw, the sunken cheeks, the deep lines carved into his forehead by years of hardship. But tonight, there was something else in his face. Fear. He lifted his hands slowly. "I'm not here to fight." Noah remained still, one hand resting near Kodiak's back. "You poisoned my dog. You threatened Ruth. You think meeting in the rain makes any of that disappear?" Brent flinched at the accusation. I never wanted to. I swear to God." Thunder cracked above them, illuminating the panic in Brent's eyes. He looked thinner than before, shoulders trembling beneath the soaked jacket, and his breath came in ragged bursts. "Talk," Noah demanded. Brent swallowed hard, breathing through the rain as if trying to steady himself. "You think I'm the bad guy. Maybe I deserve it. But you don't know what Knox has on me." "Sheriff Sterling Knox?" Noah's jaw tightened. Brent nodded miserably, wiping rain from his brow. "He's been controlling everything. The letters, the threats, the attacks. He told me what to do, when to do it, who to scare. I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice," Noah said coldly. Brent shook his head, slow, defeated. "Not when your son is dying." Noah blinked. "Your son?" The name seemed to collapse Brent's posture entirely. "Tommy. He's 11. He has a rare bone disorder. Needs treatments I can't afford. Knox promised to cover the hospital bills if I did what he asked. Then he threatened to cut everything if I refused." Noah felt the storm shift inside him, some small part of his anger softening, reshaping. "What else did he force you to do?" Noah asked. Brent took a shaky step closer, but froze when Kodiak growled. The shepherd's hackles rose. Though weakened by recent poisoning, his instinct was unwavering. Brent raised his hands again. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm done with that life." Noah said nothing. Brent's voice cracked open like a wound. "I tried to scare her. I really did. But every time I saw Mrs. Ellison's face, she reminded me of my own mother, and I hated myself for it." He wiped his face, but Noah couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. I never wanted to poison your dog. I told them it was too far. Knox said if I didn't, he'd let Tommy's next hospital bill go unpaid. And Noah, I didn't even see who actually threw the meat. Someone else did it. Kodiak stepped forward suddenly, despite Noah's quiet stay. The shepherd walked slowly toward Brent, each step heavy, deliberate. Brent shook his head, backing up. No, I don't deserve that. He's gonna bite me. I deserve it. But Kodiak didn't snarl, didn't attack. He lifted his head, sniffed Brent's trembling hand once, twice. Then he looked into Brent's eyes with an expression no human could ever fake. Sadness, questioning, as if asking, is there still something good left in you? Brent's knees gave out. He collapsed into the mud, sobbing into both hands. I'm not a monster. I'm not. The rain swallowed the sound of his breaking. And for the first time, Noah saw not the man who had terrorized Ruth, but a father trapped in a cage someone else built. The storm hammered the barn roof harder, as though beating a war drum. Noah crouched slightly, placing a hand on Kodiak's back, then looked down at Brent. Tell me everything, he said. Brent nodded through sobs. Knox wants the whole lake, every inch of it. Developers from out of state offered him a cut, millions. He's using the badge to force people out, one house at a time. And Walter Ellison? Noah asked slowly. Brent looked up with hollow eyes. Walter tried to expose it. Knox ruined him until the stress killed him. I was there the night Walter collapsed. Not inside the house, but I was watching. Knox told me to make sure he signed the papers. But when Walter dropped to the floor, I knew it was over. Noah clenched his fists. Brent continued, voice trembling. Knox told me to disappear for a few weeks after. Told me if I spoke a word, Tommy would lose everything. And now he wants Ruth gone, Noah said. Brent nodded miserably. She's the last one who won't sell. Once she's gone, Knox gets the final piece he needs to approve the resort construction. Noah inhaled slowly, the storm's thunder vibrating in his ribs. He had seen corruption before. Military contractors lying, politicians turning their backs on wounded veterans. But this was different. This was personal. This was a wolf in a sheriff's uniform preying on the gentle. What will Knox do now that Kodiak survived? Noah asked. Brent's face paled. He'll come harder. He'll come himself if he has to. Noah's voice lowered, cold and steady. Then he'll regret it. Brent didn't answer. He just sobbed again, shoulders shaking like a child's. Rain washed the mud off his face, but not the guilt. Noah finally asked, Why meet me tonight? Brent lifted his head. Because seeing that dog falling, that broke me. I realized I'd become something my son would be ashamed of. And I can't do this anymore. I can't hurt people just to keep Tommy alive. I need help, Noah. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. And what happens if Knox finds out you talked? Noah asked. Brent swallowed hard. Then I'll be the next body found by the lake. Noah moved closer, extending one hand, not with forgiveness, but with resolve. You're going to help me stop him, and in return, I'll protect your son. Brent nodded slowly, like a broken man discovering a sliver of hope. Kodiak stepped closer again, resting his head against Noah's knee. He looked between Noah and Brent, as if sensing a shift he approved of. The rain softened for a moment, falling in thin, silver threads. It almost felt like the world was allowing them one breath before the storm came crashing down harder. Noah stood. Let's finish this. Brent wiped his face with muddy hands. What do you need me to do? Tell me where Knox keeps the documents, the proof, the deals, everything. Brent hesitated only a second. His office, bottom drawer of his locked cabinet. Combination is his son's birthday. He thinks no one knows. Good, Noah said, because that's how we end this. As they walked back toward Noah's truck, Brent stopped suddenly and whispered, Noah, thank you for listening. Noah didn't look back. Don't thank me. Prove you deserve a second chance. Kodiak brushed against Brent's leg once more, gently, like a benediction. And Brent broke into tears again. Not from guilt this time, but from the tiny taste of redemption he never expected to taste again. If this chapter moved your heart, please like, comment, amen, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge so we can continue sharing stories of faith, hope, and God's quiet miracles. The morning Frost Valley was reborn began like any other, quiet, silver-tinted, and cool enough for breaths to fog in the air. But beneath the stillness, something different pulsed through the town. Noah Calder felt it before he saw anything. He stood on Ruth Ellison's front porch, a steaming mug of black coffee warming his hands, while Kodiak sat beside him, tail curled around his paws. The German shepherd was stronger now, though his breathing still carried a faint rasp from the night he had been poisoned. His eyes, however, were bright and alert, alive with instinct. Noah looked down at him. You sense it too, huh? Kodiak didn't move, didn't blink. Only his ears shifted, both tilting sharply toward the distant road. Moments later, a low vibration tremored across the ground, subtle, like the hum of an approaching storm. But this was no storm. Noah recognized the rhythm instantly. Heavy SUV tires rolling in convoy formation. Government engines. He set the mug aside, straightened, and breathed out slowly. It's happening. Inside the house, Ruth Ellison froze mid-step. She had been wiping the kitchen table, though Noah suspected she was simply keeping her hands busy to quiet the ache in her chest. The 76-year-old widow moved toward the window with small, wary steps. Her silver hair, braided neatly down her back, shimmered in the soft sunlight. Her skin was pale from sleepless nights, but her eyes, gentle sky-blue eyes, held a flicker of fragile hope. Noah, she called softly, is that them? Yes, ma'am, he answered. It's the feds. The first black SUV appeared around the bend, then another, then another. No sirens, no lights. Their silence was more powerful than any noise could have been. At the front of the convoy rode a single government sedan, the emblem of the FBI printed faintly on the windshield, barely visible but unmistakable. Behind them came two vehicles from the State Attorney General's office. Men and women in dark suits and bulletproof vests stepped out with crisp precision, radiating purpose. The way they moved said everything. Justice had finally arrived in Frost Valley. Standing near the end of the driveway, Brent Mallory watched them through trembling hands. His gray work jacket hung from his shoulders like a weight. His eyes were red and exhausted from endless nights wrestling guilt, fear, and the image of his son. Thin, pale, and hooked to hospital machines. But Brent stood there, stayed, chose to face it. He had met with federal agents 2 nights earlier, giving a full confession of Sterling Knox's crimes. It was the first brave thing he had done in years. He didn't look brave now. He looked like a man walking barefoot over shattered glass. But he didn't run. Beside him, Noah gave a slight nod, acknowledging the choice Brent had made. Brent swallowed hard. Do you think they'll help Tommy? The truth helps everyone, Noah replied. Maybe not immediately, but it's the only chance that boy has." Brent's eyes filled again. "Thank you." Noah didn't answer. He only stepped forward as a lead agent. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a clipped stride approached. Special Agent Mara Kellington. She was tall, with short-cropped tawny hair streaked in silver and a strong jaw softened by the faintest trace of empathy. Her presence radiated trained authority. "Mr. Calder?" she asked. "Yes." "You and Mr. Mallory provided crucial evidence. We reviewed your files. We cross-referenced the financials. It was enough to secure federal warrants for everyone involved." Noah nodded once. "Good. And Mrs. Ellison?" Agent Kellington asked gently. "Is she in sight?" Noah stepped aside. Ruth stood in the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her to stop the trembling. Her knitted shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders was the same one she wore the day her husband passed. The agent softened. "Ma'am, we're here because of your courage. We won't let anyone hurt you again." Ruth bit her lip. Her voice was no louder than a prayer. "Thank you." Then the valley shifted. Because a distance away, the final SUV stopped in front of Sheriff Sterling Knox's office. And Sterling Knox walked out, still wearing his uniform, still wearing that smug confidence plastered across his handsome, sharply angled face. His brown hair was perfectly combed, his badge polished, his boots clean. He looked like a man who believed the world belonged to him. Until he saw the agents. Their badges, their handcuffs. His expression cracked, not violently, but in slow, jerky angles, like ice breaking under pressure. Shock, confusion, anger. Knox raised his hands, face reddening. "What the hell is this? You have no jurisdiction here. This is my town." Agent Kellington didn't raise her voice, didn't blink. "Sheriff Sterling Knox, you are under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, extortion, coercion, tampering with evidence, and the endangerment of a civilian dependent." As the cuffs clicked around his wrists, Knox thrashed. "You think this town survives without me? I built this place. You destroyed it." Kellington cut in. "Now it's going to heal." At that exact moment, Kodiak let out a low, rumbling growl, not toward Knox, not toward the agents, but toward the tree line behind Ruth's house. The dog's fur bristled. His stance hardened. He stared into the dense woods as though seeing something no human eye could catch. Noah followed the gaze, scanning the shadows. Only wind moved, but Kodiak kept staring, not fearful, not aggressive, wary, watchful, as if whispering, "The danger is over, but something still lingers." A shiver ran up Ruth's spine. She whispered, "Your dog sees things before the rest of us." Noah answered quietly, "That's why he's still here." And then the moment passed, the woods going still again. But Noah tucked the warning into the back of his mind like a loaded round. Back in the center of town, Knox was forced into the back of a federal SUV. The mayor and 2 local officials were removed next, escorted by agents as townspeople gathered silently along the sidewalks. No cheering, no yelling. Only quiet tears from people who had lived under fear for too long. By noon, the convoy began rolling out, back toward the city, toward courtrooms and judges who would finally force accountability upon men who thought they were untouchable. But the most powerful moment came after the SUVs disappeared behind the ridge. Ruth Ellison stepped onto her porch. She gripped the railing with both hands as a sob burst from her chest. A deep, aching release from years of silent fear. Her shoulders shook, her breath broke, and her tears fell freely. Noah moved to her side immediately, catching her before her knees buckled. His arms wrapped around her small frame, steady and warm. "It's over," he said. "You're safe now." Ruth pressed a trembling hand to his cheek. If not for you, Noah, I would have lost the last thing my husband ever loved. He shook his head, voice thick. You gave me a home once, even when I didn't know how to come back to myself. I was just returning the kindness. Kodiak climbed the steps slowly, still a little unsteady. He sat beside them and gently rested his head on both their hands, bridging them in one single, sacred gesture. A family forged not by blood, but by loyalty, protection, and pain. Ruth looked out toward the shimmering surface of the lake. Through her tears, her husband's memories seemed to rise from the water like a blessing. He would be proud, Noah, she whispered. He would finally be at peace. Noah closed his eyes. Kodiak leaned against his leg. And for the first time in a long time, Frost Valley felt whole. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, Amen, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge so more people can feel God's quiet miracles and the power of compassion. In the end, stories like this remind us of something we often forget in the noise of daily life. God's miracles don't always arrive with thunder or angels. Sometimes they come through an ex-Marine who chooses compassion over fear, a loyal dog who senses the truth before anyone else can, or a widow who refuses to surrender the last piece of her husband's memory. And sometimes, the miracle is simply the courage to keep going when everything seems lost. If this story touched your heart, please share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to Guardian Stories Ridge so more people can hold on to hope. May God bless you, guide you, and cover you and your loved ones with His protection each day.